The council chamber was designed to intimidate. Its arched ceiling rose like the inside of a cathedral, lined with cold strips of argent light that never dimmed. 43 alien delegations filled the circular hall, their voices hushed as a human envoy stepped forward. Elias Vare adjusted his cuffs as if preparing for a dinner, not a treaty renewal that would decide Earth's place among stars. The Tzikar Dominion's delegation stood opposite him, tall, predatory insectoids with curved spines and a habit of twitching their mandibles when they scented weakness. Their leader, High Chancellor Quarthiscal, had been circling this moment for months, building support in whispers and veiled threats. His four-jointed hand rested lightly on the table, claws glinting under the sterile light. Ambassador Vare, Kvar's voice rasped, translated to the chamber speakers. Humanity comes here seeking continued access to council lanes. Yet you offer nothing of consequence. Where is your tribute? Where is your respect for the elder species? Elias clasped his hands behind his back, his expression neutral. Respect is not measured in coin, Chancellor. It is measured in conduct. We have abided by every council directive. We have contributed to peacekeeping, research, and relief operations. The treaty. The Chancellor moved faster than most species could follow. His clawed hand lashed out, slicing across Elias's cheek. A fine red line appeared beneath his left eye. The sound echoed, a wet whisper against skin, a faint collective gasp from the gallery. No one moved to stop him. Consider this, Kvar hissed, leaning close enough that his acidic breath brushed Elias's face. Your humanity revoked. For a moment, the hall seemed to pause. 43 delegations, some bristling, others indifferent, waited for the human to react, to protest, to plead, to break. But Elias did none of those things. He reached into his pocket, retrieved a small square cloth, and dabbed the blood away with surgeon precision. Then he looked up. His gaze did not carry fire. It carried a stillness that made the air seem thinner. I will report this incident to my government, he said evenly, and to the council chair. You will report, Kvar repeated, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Report your humiliation. Tell them the galaxy does not bow to Earth. A murmur rippled through the chamber, some mocking, some uncomfortable. The council chair, a bloated cephalopoid named Ishirtal, cleared its throat but offered no reprimand. Let the record show a minor disturbance, it declared, but not an act of aggression. We move forward. Elias inclined his head slightly and stepped back to his seat. His aide, a pale young attaché named Marin, whispered under his breath, Sir, you should request immediate withdrawal. This is a provocation. No, Elias said, his voice so soft that Marin almost missed it. This is an introduction. The session continued with meaningless votes and procedural chatter, but the hall's focus lingered on him. Some eyes watched with smugness, others with curiosity. Humanity had been blooded, and its envoy bled quietly under the lights. To them, it was a sign of submission. To Elias, it was a ledger opened. When the meeting adjourned, the delegates dispersed in clusters, their translators humming with layered gossip. Kvar strode out with his entourage, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. The strike had been deliberate, staged, the Dominion's message to every watching species. Humans were soft targets. Marin followed Elias down the corridor. We cannot let this stand. Earth will be outraged. They will, Elias said, adjusting the silver clasp on his collar. And they will wait. Outrage is rarely the first move of a patient species. You're bleeding, sir. He touched the cut again, now clotting. Good. Let them see it. Wounds are witnesses. The human embassy quarters lay several rings away, a modest suite compared to the sprawling embassies of older civilizations. Inside, the lights were warm, the air subtly filtered for human lungs. Elias dismissed the security detail, a pair of discreet Marines in formal dress, and entered his private study. The chamber door sealed behind him with a hiss. Silence filled the room. He sat before a sleek terminal, its interface dormant until it recognized his retinal scan. His fingers moved without hesitation, accessing layers of encryption hidden beneath routine diplomatic channels. A cascade of authorization sigils bloomed, then cleared. A single field waited for his input. Status. Incident recorded. Directive? He considered the words, the council's laughter still echoing faintly in his mind. They believed the blow would cow him, force concessions, perhaps even strip Earth of its voting rights. They believed the suit meant he was unarmed. His lips curved faintly. Response. Begin silence protocol. The message encrypted itself and vanished into the network, a ghost in the council's machinery. Outside his window, the dying star burned red and sullen, its flares painting the station's hull in shifting shadows. Elias poured himself a glass of water, sipped once, and let the taste steady him. He thought of his training, of the long years when he had been more than a diplomat, when he had worn no suit, only silence. Behind him, Marin lingered in the doorway. You're not going to ask for protection? I am protection, Elias replied, without looking back. Marin swallowed. What will you do? Negotiate, Elias said. He set the empty glass down with surgical precision, as though even gravity obeyed his timing. But first, they must learn the cost of striking what they cannot measure. The aide hesitated. Sir, forgive me, but you seem calm. I prefer precision over noise. Elias turned, the faint line of dried blood stark against his pale skin. Noise gets you killed in halls like these. The young man left unsettled, and the door sealed again. Elias stood alone, hands resting on the polished table, eyes fixed on the dark void beyond the glass. Somewhere in that void, Earth listened. Somewhere, signals began to shift. Protocols awakened, names were marked. And in the Galactic Council, 43 species celebrated a blow they did not yet understand. It would not be the last mark made tonight. The human embassy on the Galactic Council station was unremarkable by design. Clean lines, neutral colors, walls that neither invited nor repelled attention. Elias Vare preferred it that way. He walked the central hall slowly, hands clasped behind his back, the faint cut on his cheek left untreated. Every diplomat who passed saw the mark. Every glance measured it differently, a scar of weakness or a signature of patience. Marin hovered a step behind him, restless. The council chair sent no apology, not even a formal note. They won't, Elias said. An apology would imply responsibility. They planned this, didn't they? The Chancellor, the Dominion. They execute a message, Elias interrupted, his tone even, and they expect us to respond with noise. He stopped before the window overlooking the central concourse, a slow-moving river of alien delegates, each draped in their own symbols of power. The TZ car moved with calculated aggression, flanked by armored guards that looked more ceremonial than protective. They were predators on familiar ground. Elias watched without expression. Noise is a gift to predators. It tells them where to bite next. Marin exhaled through his teeth. Then what's the plan? We cannot ignore this. We won't. The word hung like a drop blade. Marin waited, but Elias did not elaborate. He turned from the window and entered his private office, a room layered with soft light and thick soundproofing panels. Once the door sealed, the atmosphere changed. The embassy's polite mask fell away. The desk terminal lit at his approach, presenting a single encrypted confirmation. Silence protocol. Acknowledged. He read the details that followed. Shifting traffic schedules in distant sectors. Delayed shipments marked as routine maintenance. Coded acknowledgments from listening posts on a fringe. It was not an order for war. It was preparation for something far quieter. Marin stepped closer, lowering his voice. Earth Command replied. They had begun their work. Elias said. He scrolled past the lines of confirmation without visible reaction. Our task is to remain predictable. Predictable and underestimated. Until they forget the strike and start believing it costs nothing. Marin hesitated, then leaned against the desk. Why send you, sir? Of all people. They knew the council was hostile. Because hostility is loud. Loudness is a pattern. And patterns, Elias said, tapping the glass surface lightly, can be used. The terminal dimmed, leaving only the city of the station outside, a sprawl of architecture built by too many species to have a single style, each layer betraying a century of rivalries. Elias studied the lights, a lattice of pathways, sensors, and blind spots. "They will watch us now," he said. "They will expect our outrage to blind us. Instead, we will see." That night, while the council quarters dimmed to their artificial night cycle, Elias reviewed the station's latest security briefs. Cargo drones rerouted through less monitored docks. Maintenance schedules adjusted without notice. Small things, easily dismissed, yet he saw the pattern forming like lines on a map. Near midnight, his console chimed softly. An encrypted message arrived, a string of numbers that resolved into a simple directive. Access granted, Sector E9. He memorized the coordinates, then closed the channel before Marin stirred in the outer office. The young attaché had been assigned as a diplomat's aide, not a witness. In the morning, the council reconvened for trade negotiations. The Tzikar delegation entered first, their chancellor absent, leaving a deputy to carry his words. "The human envoy may observe," the deputy announced with a thin smile, "but he may not speak until his nation recognizes his place." Elias inclined his head slightly. "Observation often teaches more than argument." The deputy sneered, expecting a rebuttal that never came. The session dragged, filled with ritual posturing and meaningless amendments. Elias spoke only once, asking a question about mineral tariffs in a tone so neutral it passed unnoticed, except by a single aide 2 rows behind the Dominion bench, who stiffened at the phrasing. Elias marked the reaction and said nothing. When the session ended, he left without haste. The corridor to Sector E9 was quiet, designed for maintenance crews and low-traffic personnel. He walked it alone, coat buttoned, eyes tracing the silent cameras above. Most were active. A few blinked in slow standby, the pattern from a night before. At the end of the hall waited a sealed access hatch. It opened at his touch. Inside, a storage bay, empty but for a single crate the size of a small table. The crate bore no flag, no crest, only a discreet human registry code. Elias ran his hand over the seal. It hissed open to reveal a narrow case wrapped in dark polymer. He did not lift it out. He only checked the integrity locks, then sealed it again. Marin found him back in the office hours later. "You missed the evening reception," he said, half accusation, half concern. "I don't drink with hyenas before the hunt," Elias replied. "You make this sound like a battlefield." "It is," Elias said, finally meeting his aide's eyes. "Only here. The knives are contracts, and the bullets were smiles." Marin hesitated. Should I warn the press? Leak something to the neutral blocks?" "No," Elias said. "They need to believe we are wounded. Let them write their stories. Let them think they are shaping the narrative." He poured a cup of tea, steam rising in the cool air. "Power is rarely taken by shouting, Marin. It is taken by listening longer than others can endure." Outside, the station's artificial night continued its slow cycle. Somewhere deep in its infrastructure, files vanished, schedules shifted again, a lock failed without warning. No alarms rang. Nothing obvious broke. But in the Tzikar embassy, a junior clerk found his access revoked without explanation. In the Venery delegation, a surveillance drone failed its routine sweep and returned blank. Minor errors, dismissed as coincidence. Elias set his cup down and opened a fresh file on the terminal. A list of names appeared, mid-level envoys, deputies, security officers, those who had laughed when the blow struck. He read each name slowly, memorizing details. Marin spoke again, quieter this time. "You don't look angry, sir." "Anger is for men who have lost their plan," Elias said, closing the list. "I still have mine." The aide looked at the faint scar on his face, the calm behind his words, and realized with a shiver that the ambassador had never raised his voice, never clenched a fist, never demanded revenge. He simply moved one step at a time, like a tide no one had noticed until it reached their doors. The chamber lights dimmed to their lowest setting. Beyond the glass, the dying star flared and faded. The Galactic Council slept, believing its humiliation unanswered. In the quiet of the human embassy, Elias prepared the silence that would follow. The council chamber was louder today. Whispers traveled like static along the curved walls as delegates exchanged rumors, none of them flattering to humanity. Some claimed Earth had sent a weak envoy. Others whispered the TZ car strike was a prelude to sanctions. Elias Vare entered the hall without adjusting his pace. The faint mark on his cheek had faded to a thin line, yet many glanced at it with concealed amusement. Quar Thiskel was present this time, mandibles twitching in feigned politeness. "Ambassador," he said, voice carrying just enough for nearby delegations to hear. "I trust you have rested. The galaxy moves quickly, do not lag behind." Elias met his gaze for a heartbeat, then turned his attention to the council chair. "Proceed with today's agenda." The Chancellor's mandibles clicked in irritation, but he said nothing. The first motions passed without challenge. Trade routes reassigned, security budgets approved, relief fleets delayed. Elias spoke sparingly, each word chosen as if measured on a scale. During a recess, an Urican envoy, scales pale from age, approached him near the central dais. "Your restraint is admirable, Ambassador," the creature rasped. "But they smell blood. Predators prefer a target that does not move." Elias regarded him calmly. Stillness and weakness are not the same. The Urican's tongue flicked nervously. "They say you carry no guard, that you wait alone. I have what I need." Elias let the words hang, neither confirming nor denying. The envoy bowed slightly and moved on, unwilling to linger near something he could not measure. By evening, the gossip had shifted. Whispers of new council resolutions against Earth surfaced. Limits on shipping, increased tariffs, inspections on human colonies. None were yet formal, but the Dominion's influence was spreading. Quar held court in the lounge after adjournment, his subordinates weaving a web of half-promises and veiled threats. Elias did not attend. He moved through quieter corridors, the kind reserved for logistics crews and administrative staff. The station's artificial night had begun to settle. Traffic thinned to a trickle. He paused at an intersection where 3 surveillance nodes met, each blinking at regular intervals. 2 blinked in perfect synchrony. The third paused, slightly off pattern, a fraction of a second behind. He entered the maintenance hatch beside it. The passage led to a narrow observation deck overlooking one of the secondary docking bays. Crates stood stacked in precise rows, but 2 bore the faint residue of recent movement. Elias knelt, running his hand along the deck plating. The thermal signature was fresh, hours at most. His wrist console hummed, projecting a faint lattice of data over the crates. Maintenance requests filed, deliveries logged, none matching the heat trace. Someone had moved something here without record. "Sloppy," he murmured. He left no trace of his presence, sealing the hatch behind him. The next day, the TZ car chancellor delivered his most public provocation yet. The human delegation, Quar announced before the entire assembly, has yet to condemn the pirates along the Perseid corridor, pirates with human weapons. Silence is complicity. A ripple of agreement passed through the hall. Elias rose slowly. "The corridor you speak of," he said, "was cleared by a joint task force 6 months ago." Then explain the wreckage found last week. Quar's claws tapped the podium, an echo of menace. "Explain the human shells." Elias inclined his head. "Perhaps you should ask your own patrols how they came to lose them." A murmur ran through the chamber. The Chancellor's mandibles flared. "You accuse the Dominion?" "I question the evidence," Elias said, voice level. "If your proof is solid, present it. Otherwise, I will treat your statement as theater." The room quieted. Several delegations turned away, unwilling to be drawn further. Quar's claws withdrew, but his compound eyes burned. "Careful, Ambassador," he said softly. "You walk on glass." "Then I will tread lightly," Elias replied, and sat down. Later, in the dim corridors outside the council hall, a junior officer intercepted him. The insignia on her collar marked her as Venery Security, a faction known for trading information when the price was subtle. "You make enemies quickly," she said. "I keep my schedule efficient," Elias answered. The officer studied him. "They say you sent no formal protest. No fleet, no sanctions. I was sent to negotiate, not to shout." Strange way to negotiate, with silence. Elias paused, then looked at her fully. Silence is not absence. It is preparation. She said nothing further and disappeared into the crowd. But when Elias returned to his office that night, a fragment of restricted data awaited him. Shipping manifests altered under Dominion oversight. Cargo containers rerouted from neutral sectors. The strands began to align. Marin entered as Elias traced the lines on his display. "Is this it?" he asked, leaning over the table. "Proof of their staging?" "Proof of their confidence," Elias said. "They believe no one is watching. What will you do with it?" "For now, nothing." Elias closed the file. Information becomes valuable when it is missed, not when it is seen. Marin frowned. "You sound like this is a game." Elias turned his gaze to the window, where the dying star pulsed like a slow heartbeat. "Games end. This will not. This is a ledger, and they have begun to write in ink." The next morning, the first disappearance was whispered across the upper decks. A Dominion aide, last seen leaving a late meeting, failed to report for duty. No alarm sounded. No search was called, but the Chancellor's guards tightened their circle, and the Council's corridor seemed a little more alert. Elias did not alter his routine. He attended sessions, posed no threats, offered no complaints. His composure began to irritate as much as it unsettled. At the end of the day, a rival ambassador approached him in the atrium, a tall, thin Kalari with a habit of sniffing out weakness. "You do not look troubled, human," the Kalari said. "Most would howl for justice by now." Elias smiled faintly. "Anger is a signal. Why give them one?" The Kalari tilted his head, unsure whether it was a warning or a jest, and retreated. When the hall emptied, Elias remained alone for a moment longer, listening to the faint hum of the station's life support. The web was tightening, not around him, but around those who had mistaken his silence for surrender. He left without haste, footsteps measured, as though the whole station kept time with his stride. The summons arrived at dawn, a discreet message encrypted in the Council's neutral format. "Private assembly. High Chancellor Quar requests your presence. Location: Sublevel Chamber 9, a room not listed on public itineraries." Elias Vare read it once, then set the slate aside. The Dominion had grown impatient. Subtle measures had not shaken him. Public humiliation had not bent him. Now they wanted control behind sealed doors. He arrived without entourage. The corridor leading to Chamber 9 smelled faintly of sterilized metal. The lighting here was warmer, designed to appear welcoming, but its stillness carried tension. Two Tizkar guards stood before the entrance, their clawed hands resting near their weapons. They scanned him, said nothing, and opened the door. Inside, a circular table waited, much smaller than the main council hall, but lined with faces he recognized. Dominion strategists, a pair of neutral bloc envoys, and two council adjudicators whose neutrality had always been for sale. At the head sat Quar, posture rigid, mandibles barely concealing his satisfaction. "Ambassador Vare," Quar said, motioning to a chair across from him. "At last we speak without the distractions of ceremony." Elias sat, folding his hands on the table. "You seem eager for clarity, Chancellor. I am listening." The alien leaned forward, tapping his claws against the table's surface. "Humanity is an anomaly, untempered, unchecked, pretending to be equal among those who shaped this order long before your species left its cradle. This cannot continue." A council adjudicator chimed in, voice thin. "The proposed sanctions would protect stability, demilitarization, trade oversight, terms that guarantee peace for all." Elias let the words flow without interruption. Only when silence returned did he answer. "You call this peace. I see it dress coercion." Quara's mandibles flared. "You were struck, humiliated before the galaxy, yet you bring no fleet, no protest. That tells me two things. Your government fears war, and you have come here with nothing." The others shifted in their seats, the moment teetering between threat and negotiation. Elias looked at each face in turn. "You believe that because I have not shouted, I have surrendered. Because I have not raised my hand, I have none to raise." He reached to the table and slid a small metallic token forward. It was matte, unmarked, no larger than the coin. It clicked once as it settled. The nearest envoy frowned. What is that? A conversation, Elias replied. The token pulsed once, and the chamber's lights flickered. Every personal communicator in the room went dark. Surveillance lenses recessed into the ceiling dimmed, their faint indicators dying like stars swallowed by cloud. Kvar rose sharply. What is this? Elias remained seated. Privacy. You requested a private assembly. Now it is one. The Chancellor's guards tried their panels. The door did not respond. The token pulsed again, faint, steady. Elias spoke, his voice calm, deliberate. In the last 48 hours, 7 of your mid-level operatives have been reassigned, dismissed, or gone missing. 2 cargo routes you forged through the sanction scheme no longer exist on council records. A vote you intended to hold tonight has no quorum. Kvar's compound eyes narrowed. You threaten us? No. Elias finally leaned forward, fingers steepled. I inform you, threats require noise. I prefer results. One of the adjudicators rose, face pale beneath its translucent skin. This is extortion. You have no authority. Elias cut him off with a glance, so sharp it halted the words. I have authority because I am still sitting here. You think Earth is young, naive, desperate for your corridors. That was your mistake. We are here because we listen longer than you scheme. Kvar's claws twitched. What do you want? Balance. Elias said, you will withdraw the sanctions proposal. You will issue a joint statement condemning the corridor raids as unresolved and unlinked to any council member. And you will return to your delegation with the lesson you earned. Some suits are cut from quieter cloth. The room simmered with a mix of fear and disbelief. One envoy whispered, You can't dictate terms here. Elias tapped the token. The lights dimmed further. Somewhere beneath the table, the floor vibrated, a faint, almost imperceptible hum. If you refuse, he said, the ledger continues. Quietly, names become numbers. Numbers become vacancies. And the galaxy will ask why so many who struck one man began to vanish. Kvar stared at him, the tension in his shoulders betraying the first shadow of doubt. You cannot touch me, he spat. Elias met his gaze without a blink. You already feel the air tighten, Chancellor. That is what it feels like when a door closes around you. The silence stretched. One of the neutral envoys cleared his throat. Chancellor, perhaps delay is wiser. The Council will not support a scandal now. Kvar slammed a claw against the table. Not Elias, but at the creeping sense that his trap had reversed. This is not over, he growled. No, Elias said, standing, retrieving the token. It is only beginning. The lights returned. The door unlocked with a sigh. Guards straightened as though waking from a spell. The delegates filed out, expressions tight, words hushed. Kvar lingered, mandibles working silently as Elias passed him. What are you? The Chancellor asked. Elias adjusted his cuff. A diplomat. You wanted a warlord. Be grateful I am not that. He left without further word. Back in the human embassy, Marin was waiting, pale and restless. You were gone too long. I heard whispers, lockdowns in the lower levels, communications blackouts. What happened? Elias poured himself water, steady as a heartbeat. A conversation. Marin's eyes searched his face. They will retaliate. They will hesitate. Elias corrected. Hesitation is the beginning of compromise. The aide wanted to ask more, but something in the ambassador's posture made him stop. Elias was not gloating. There was no triumph in his voice. Only precision, measured as the tick of a clock, approaching an hour no one else had yet read. That night, 3 Dominion ships quietly departed the station without explanation. 2 delegates resigned their posts before dawn. No accusations were made. No alarm sounded. But in the private channels of the Galactic Council, a phrase began to circulate, whispered without attribution, repeated without context. Do not touch the man in the suit. 3 days passed without ceremony, yet the station felt altered. Conversations in the wide halls had softened. Laughter dimmed. Steps quickened. Glances lingered longer than before. Rumors had taken root. not from official reports, but from the absences that followed Elias Vare's private meeting. Entire offices once brimming with Dominion influence now sat in reassignment review. Chairs were empty. Doors were locked. Marin entered the ambassador's office with a data pad pressed tight against his chest. 5 more departures this morning, he murmured. No announcements. Just gone. Elias didn't look up from the encrypted report scrolling across his console. Good. Let the void speak louder than we ever could. The aide stepped closer, lowering his voice. The council wants a public hearing tomorrow. They claim it's for transparency. Of course, Elias said, setting the console aside. They want to measure our tone in daylight. Marin hesitated. And if they press you? They already pressed, Elias replied, standing and straightening his suit. Tomorrow they will listen. The Grand Council Hall was full again, though its energy was nothing like the day of the slap. Then there had been spectacle. Now there was calculation, the kind that came after predators tasted their own reflection. Kvar sat at his usual seat, mandibles drawn tight, eyes unreadable. The Chancellor's voice carried less thunder than before. Ambassador Vare, the Council recognizes you. Elias stepped into the center, every stride measured. No raised banners, no escort, only the echo of shoes on polished alloy. Counselors, he began, you summoned me to clarify Earth's position. A neutral bloc delegate spoke first. Your absence from recent sessions has caused unease. Corridor raids continue to destabilize trade. Rumors persist about covert operations linked to your government. Elias allowed the murmur to ripple. Earth's position is unchanged, he said evenly. We seek peace, trade, and honest dialogue. But peace does not mean blindness, and dialogue does not mean silence. Kvar leaned forward, claws clacking against the table. You maneuver in the shadows, Ambassador. Ships vanish. Delegates resign. Routes close overnight. And yet you stand here as though untouched. Elias met his gaze. You accuse us of shadows, yet you laid the first snare in them. The hall stirred. Several envoys exchanged glances. Others looked at the Chancellor with the first visible hints of doubt. An adjudicator, pale and cautious, raised a hand. Ambassador, the Council must decide how to move forward. Will your government cooperate with a full investigation of the corridor attacks? Yes, Elias said without pause. And we expect the same of every party involved, including those who supplied raiders with docking codes and false manifests. That struck like a blade. A hum coursed through the chamber. Kvar's jaw twitched. You have no proof. Elias tapped his wrist. A projection appeared above the table. Fragments of shipping logs, intercepted messages, signatures that should have been erased, but were not. They did not name the Chancellor directly, but they circled him tightly, a ring of implication too narrow to ignore. The room chilled. One delegate whispered to another. A third slowly shifted his chair away from Kvar's flank. You wish for light, Elias said softly. Now you have it. The Chancellor rose, slow and deliberate. This is blackmail dressed as diplomacy. No, Elias replied, voice calm as still water. This is consequence, dressed as courtesy. He deactivated the projection. Earth does not demand your downfall. We demand fairness. Cease your manufactured sanctions. Restore access to neutral lanes, and the ledger ends here. Continue your games, and the void you feel now will deepen. Kvar's mandibles opened, then closed without a word. Around him, silence thickened. Allies with Cheer's boldness a week ago now studied their claws, their cuffs, their notes, pretending they had never applauded. The High Council chair finally spoke, voice thin. The motion for sanctions is hereby suspended pending full investigation. Murmurs followed. Some relieved, some resentful, none brave enough to oppose aloud. After the session, Elias walked the long corridor back to the human wing. Marin followed, almost struggling to keep pace. You didn't even raise your voice, he said quietly. And they folded. They folded because they already felt the weight. Elias said, today was only the closing act. The aide studied him. Did you ever doubt? Elias slowed, just enough for the question to settle. Doubt is healthy. It keeps the blade sharp. But fear? Fear is a tool they tried to use. They forgot it cuts both ways. That evening, a message arrived from the Dominion. Chancellor Quar is returning to his capital for consultation. No farewell was sent. No ceremony marked his departure. The war drums that had thundered so confidently now faded into static. Elias stood by the viewport as the Dominion vessel detached, its running lights dim in the distance. The stars beyond the station glittered, indifferent. Marin joined him, hands clasped behind his back. "You know they'll call you a ghost," he said. "Half the station already does. The man who does nothing and yet leaves no one standing." Elias allowed the faintest of smiles. Ghosts are only feared because no one hears them coming. Days later, a sealed communique arrived from Earth Command. Negotiation objectives met. Corridor rights restored. Proceed with long-term monitoring. Elias read it once, then encrypted it away. There was no parade to greet the quiet kind of victory. It was a ledger closed without applause, a war won without banners. He returned to the balcony of the human embassy that night, watching freighters realign their courses. The scars of the past weeks would linger in whispers, but the lanes would open again. Marin approached, hesitant. Was this the end? No. Elias said, eyes still on the stars. This was a warning. Next time, they may remember the cost. The aide swallowed. And if they don't? Elias finally turned, his expression neither cold nor kind, only resolute. Then they will learn again. Quietly. Far across the station, in chambers now scrubbed clean of Dominion influence, a file was marked classified and sealed for council eyes only. It contained no speeches, no battles. Only names crossed out, routes closed, messages intercepted. The title at the top read simply, Human Diplomatic Measures, Tier Silent. And beneath it, in a handwritten note that no one admitted authoring, do not mistake their calm for weakness.